So today we're going to tackle part 2 of this my stress wheel. Last week we talked a little bit about physical stress and emotional stress. And again, the goal is to create a little bit more harmony. So if one area is really kind of rated low, then you want to try to work on that section in particular. If there's a couple sections that are low, again, trying to create some harmony. If everything's really low, you're probably experiencing a lot of stress, panic, anxiety. So today we'll get started on chemical stress. Thanks for joining me today. Chemical stress can be broken down into a couple different things. And again, just kind of some things in regular life. Unfortunately, food falls into this category. That can be a very confusing part right now, especially because there's so much marketing behind our food right now, and it may sound healthy, but it's not necessarily great for everybody. A lot of processed foods. It can be our environment that we're in, whether that's our work environment. That can be exposing us to different, chemicals, things like that. Thinking like painting or some of those kind of chemicals or some other products that people are exposed to in their environment. It can be different body care products. There's a lot of things in even like shampoos and soaps and things like that. It could be toothpaste. Different allergies again. That can be environmental allergies and things like that. And it can be different types of toxins. So there's heavy metals. There's unfortunately like parasites and molds and things like that can get into your system and wreak some havoc. And then supplements and medications is another category of different kinds of chemical stresses that can occur. So not all supplements and medications are bad, of course, but there are some out there that, especially the medications, can have a lot of different side effects. That's why they typically have those long lists of things in the commercials that you see on TV. And even supplements are not super well regulated, so they can have a lot of products in them that necessarily aren't what they're supposed to be, or maybe your body will react differently to those. So again, it's kind of looking at what are some maybe different versions of stress in your life when it comes to the chemical side. If it's a medication thing, of course, I'm not going to tell you to go off your medication, but if you're experiencing some weird side effects or you don't like the way you feel on it, that would be where you talk to your medical doctor and maybe try to tweak or change that up. Or we can look into different ways, hopefully more on the preventative side, just hopefully there are some ailments out there that of course require medication continuously, but a lot of them, I think there are some proactive things that you should be doing on top of the medication with the hope that you could go off of it someday. So one thing that I do at my office is the hair and saliva testing for this category. I think it can be very helpful to give you very specific knowledge on what are some of your toxins. It can look over at your overall kind of health picture. So it tells you different food sensitivities and environmental sensitivities. It lets you know what's going on in your system that way. Tells you about different toxins. So that's also helpful. A lot of people don't know what they have kind of sitting in their system that can be irritating. So that's one thing that you can do. Again, trying to put things that, if you read the labels and you see a bunch of words that you probably can't pronounce, those are probably signs of some chemicals or things like that. So again, trying to go back to the basics of life, trying to do some of the basic foods. Again, food. I like the couple sayings if we're talking food. If your grandma's grandma doesn't recognize it as food, it's probably not food. So that's a good one. Again, if you can't pronounce a lot of the names on the box, that's another one. Another way to shop is shop the perimeter of the grocery store. That's usually going to be the refrigerated section or the freezer section. That's where you're often going to, especially the refrigerated section, you're often going to find the real whole foods. All the processed stuff is usually in the middle because it can sit on the shelf longer and can keep easier. So just shopping, trying to get food as close to its natural state as possible. The other food saying I like is food that's just dead or dying, meaning food should be looking as close to its original state. It should rot. It should go bad. If it's in its natural state, it shouldn't be able to sit on a shelf forever and ever and do that too. Of course, you can take food even farther and how was it, if it's an animal, what was done to that animal, or what was that animal given, what was that animal fed. Same with the fruits and vegetables, what kind of pesticides or things like that did they use with it too. So that's kind of the chemical stress section. And again, we're just trying to create some balance here. So if you think you're struggling in that area, that's an area that you need to maybe pay attention to and try to, again, create some action steps on that. Simple, practical, just start maybe in one category of that if you really know you're struggling in an area. And just make small chunks. We're taking bites again here, not just trying to make huge giant leaps. That's more practical in the long term. So this is about lifestyle change more than a quick fix. Spiritual stress is the fourth category in the health wheel. So again, we have physical, we have emotional, we have chemical, and we have spiritual. Spiritual stress, to me, the simplest way to chalk this up is I just call it a basically kind of your moral code or moral ethics, moral compass. I've worded it moral compass more than once with a few people. Really, truly, this can break into different religions, and I won't get into that. I'll just kind of say what works for me and what I believe, and then you can kind of break off of that, and hopefully that will make sense for something in your life or your belief system. But to me, we all have beliefs. We all have things that we think are true. Where do we get that truth from, or where does that knowledge come from? So I'm a Christian myself. That to me, I know Christianity can kind of have a broad title and mean a lot of different things to people, but to me that's believing in Jesus, and that Jesus was telling the truth, and that the Bible is my kind of main source. So that's, again, where I get a lot of my truth. And it's about a personal relationship with Jesus. So just like any relationship out there, it's about spending time with somebody. And that's kind of what I do if I want to be closer in a relationship with really anybody, whether it's on earth or with Jesus, is spending more time learning about that person, spending more time meditating. So kind of some different things with that is, again, if you're having some spiritual stress is, again, looking at what do you believe to be true, where do you get your truth, or where is your source of your truth, and are you doing things that line up with that truth? Or are you doing things that contradict what you know is to be right? So, again, we kind of all have our own versions of beliefs, but that's kind of where mine comes from. So I have to ask myself, am I lining myself up with that? Knowing that I'm imperfect, knowing that I make mistakes, and we have to give ourselves some grace in that too. But we want to make sure that we're trying to do things that line up with what we believe to be true. If we're oftentimes doing things that don't line up with what we believe to be true, we're going to have some moral conflict, internal conflict, and that's going to create stress. So different versions of spiritual stress, again, can be that moral compass, again, are you doing things that line up with your belief system, what you believe to be true, kind of a higher power of faith, belief systems, again, what you know is right, or simplifying it to what is right, what is wrong, and again, where are you believing that, where are you getting that truth source from? So some different things that you can do to manage that section. For me, it's a relationship-based faith. I believe in a higher power. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus, but more than believing in Jesus, I believe that it's a personal relationship. And like I said, if you want a better relationship, it's about spending time with somebody. So to me, my stress reliever, again, is making important choices that line up with my truth system or my belief system. It's also spending time. For me, that's either reading the Bible or doing Bible studies. It can be prayer, either for myself or having people pray for me. I love to pray for my patients. That's part of my drive to work every single day, is praying for my patients and my business, that I can be hopefully a positive influence in their day. Some of those other things can be listening to I like listening to more positive things than I do negative things. So it's trying to fill in that mind, fill in that soul with positive instead of negative. There's plenty of negative in this world, and what we focus on is kind of where we steer ourselves to. So I try to fill myself with as much positive as I can. And again, that can be, I've listened to different YouTube things that are positive in the morning, kind of mindset, again, trying to get my frame of mind right. And that can be biblically based, that can be faith-based, it can also be non-faith-based, but people that are kind of cheering me up and getting me motivated too. So again, it's just kind of looking at your life. We always have things we can improve upon. We're imperfect people, and we're never going to be perfect. But it's, again, just striving to make improvements, trying to line things up with your belief system, feeding that part from what you believe to be your truth, and just trying to feed your soul that way. So that's the spiritual stress side. Again, I'm just trying to say what I believe in my life. You kind of have to tweak that to make sure that that's positive and a good thing for you. Again, where do you get your truth from? What do you believe to be true? And are you doing a pretty good job overall on trying to steer yourself into that? So that's an area you're struggling in. Sometimes it's being around people that are great mentors. So are there people in your life that you're going, wow, that's a great person and an influencer for me? Are you spending more time with that person? That might be a great way, just kind of as, not trying to be that person, but sometimes people can be great influencers too. Thank you, Tiffany. I'm trying to be a positive influence. So, good days and bad days. But again, sometimes just being around positive people is really helpful, or people that believe kind of a similar belief system or the same belief system as you can also be helpful. So, again, that's kind of our general wheel. If we're looking at that, we've got our physical stress we've talked about now, our emotional stress, our chemical stress, and our spiritual stress. And again, trying to create harmony. We want to have life in a nice, smooth circle. Realistically, if you're 10 out of 10 on all of those and you're doing amazing, again, I said this last time, you need to be teaching me because I should be learning from you. If there's an area or a couple areas in your life that you feel like you're maybe not more balanced on, that is trying to do things in that area to kind of level it out a little bit. So maybe we need to spend a little bit more time, or I need to spend a little bit more time in my emotional stress. Or maybe I need to do a little bit of better job of the chemical stress right now. Or maybe I'm doing a little too much snacking before bed. Guilty. So change my patterns. Or it's again the spiritual stress or the chemical stress. So we're trying to create harmony again. Again, as I mentioned, if everything's about a 2 instead of a 10 being the best, you're probably going to be experiencing some anxiety, some fear, panic. Sound familiar to anybody out there, especially going through this COVID part? And then the middle of all of that, again, to me, it kind of has a bullseye in it, and this is kind of the center of it all, is what I call soul health. So we talked about kind of all the different kinds of stress around the edges, but in the center of all of us, kind of like the heart and the soul of us, I think is something bigger than all of that. I've seen people that are, basically dying. They don't have the health aspect, but they're one of the most joyful, wonderful people to be around at times because I think their soul health is strong. So it's more about, again, kind of a deeper soul thing sometimes than all these outer things that we can really, they're important, but again, what's going on in your soul? Is your soul joyful? So to me, soul health is kind of more around purpose. Why are you here? What are you doing? What's your purpose in life? It can be around your gifts and talents. I think every single one of us is made uniquely and beautifully made. Are we going with those talents and really trying to turn up the volume on them? Or are we always just focusing on our crappiest parts and trying to maybe improve those a little bit, and spending 90% of our energy on our crappiest parts that maybe we're not supposed to be good at, instead of really turning up the volume on the parts that we are uniquely and beautifully made to do? So our specific gifts and talents. This can be joy. Again, I mentioned harmony a few times. It can be higher power. Who do you believe? Again, going back to that spiritual health a little bit. So what truly gets you happy? What gets you excited? I like to call them passion topics sometimes. What are those things in your life that really, really make you feel joyful every single time you talk about it, or just about every single time you talk about it? What are those things that just soul health you up? I don't even know if that's a wording, but so I hope you found that helpful. Again, this is just kind of a way to look at life. Life is a constantly ongoing thing, and we're going to have different stresses along the way. So this is why I love this tool, because it's such a simple little way to assess where are you right now. You've learned through your heartache, through your troubles, through your uncomfortable parts before. What did you do that was helpful? Maybe what did you do and what did you learn and through your failure to be able to help yourself moving forward? So again, just looking at different kinds of stress, where you are right now, where can you make simple improvements? Again, most of these are just practical steps. It doesn't have to be hard. If you have multiple areas to work on, maybe just pick one and then try to do maybe 1 or 2 of those action steps. This is really about action. We can say we're stressed all we want. I think we need to take a moment to actually pause. This is maybe a good time for some people if they're not as busy. Of course, some people are busier. But just pause long enough to say, what's going on in my life? Maybe actually think about it for a second and saying, I'm busy, I'm stressed, but actually pause long enough to say, why am I busy? Where is my stress coming from? And are there simple things that maybe I can do to start changing my patterns moving forward? I really appreciate you all being here. I wish you the best, and I really hope this was helpful and worth your time being on here today.